Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another brand new episode of System Link, our combination podcast and gameplay stream. I'm joined as ever by my ever reliable co-host, Mike Hazelton from the Xbox Guide. Good evening, Mike. How are we doing?
Hi. Yeah, really good today. How about you?
Yeah, all good here on this jolly Wednesday evening. We've got plenty of different things to be discussing, our quick highlights and also our deep dive for tonight. Plug Socket, Big Manny, fantastic to see you in chat. Good evening, guys. Thank you for jumping on. I love Plug Socket straight away with a Burly Bird rave. That's great. Starting off on the right note. So we've got just a couple bits to cover, some little tidbits here and there, just some bits we're going to go through, some headlines across the board, and then we've got our deep dive tonight on the state of PS5 Pro pre-orders. That was nearly a fuck up by me there. That was really tough to say quickly. Looking at perhaps the implications for how generations are going to now pan out. I fucked up the easy bit. Also, swear-tastic. I need to tone it down. Put a swear tag on here. But also looking, I suppose, at how PS5 Pro might affect the launch timing and how things will work, moving forward, right? Looking at the idea of, will that bump up Microsoft's release timing because they want to get a console out quicker? Are they again going to push? Because, the idea of, say, a handheld becomes a priority for them to compete with Switch 2. There's a lot for us to go through there and obviously plenty to unpack. But we're going to dive in, first of all, just with some key highlights and headlines from the last few days since our previous episode. Just to remind everyone, by the way, also, before we kick into this, that Saturdays, Burly Bird Live, we're now co-hosting and now at 9 o'clock on a Saturday. Mike and I playing something for about an hour and a half. Please feel free to jump into that. We had a really great stream last weekend. It was our first one doing a Saturday stream, so please do consider checking that out. We're going to maintain System Link every Wednesday, but yeah, that was actually, I think, a really good sort of test of doing that on a Saturday. It seemed to work pretty well, I think.
Yeah, it was nice. Oh, yeah, we had the finals, new season to play, so that coincided with it quite nicely. Are you playing anything at the moment, offline?
Oh, good question. I kind of wrapped up Hellblade, so I've kind of wrapped up my time with that now.
Wrapped up as in Brexit.
Yeah, it was a bit of a Brexit. Like, I wasn't credits roll on that. I kind of just had my fill, I think, of that. And no necessarily sort of like, it wasn't like some major game-breaking issue. I didn't particularly like the puzzle design, and I just found it, especially the combat, then got a bit repetitive. And just for those two reasons, I just kind of found myself finally like just struggling to get that motivation to get back to it. So I'm on the market. I'm open season right now to see kind of what's going to be my next thing. The closer and closer we get to October 31st, though, I'm just looking at Dragon Age. I think that's going to be my next big project. Certainly going in towards the end of the year. What about you? Are you indieing right now across Game Pass? Anything else cooking?
I'm playing Age of Mythology on Game Pass, which is
nice.
I love Age of Empires. It's a bit, I don't know, it's a bit difficult to get your head around when you're used to like sensible things like archers counter,
of course,
people behind walls and stuff, and then you have like a mythological creature that you have to kind of work out what it does. But it's a nice
Minotaur comes in and just takes them out.
Yeah, exactly. Well, literally, yeah, it's a bit of a curveball, but it's okay. I mean, I don't think I'll stick with it for ages. I'm just kind of putting off getting back into Starfield, but I'll be doing that, I think, probably in the next week. And Plug Socket, talking about Metaphor, that didn't really... It's not really my sort of thing, but it's had a load of hype about it, and there's a trial you can play, so I might give that a go before I go to Starfield and just see if it clicks with me.
Yeah, nice. Also, he just clocked the fact that your Left 4 Dead 2 was peeking out in the background there. So Mike's always got something cooking in his backdrop. So yeah, good spot. One of our all-time classics. I mean, I could dedicate, and maybe we will, now I'm just thinking of this idea, dedicate like a whole System Link to like exploring some of our retro classics and just things that we know have been co-op gems for us.
Well, we could stream it, couldn't we? Left 4 Dead 2.
Ooh, now we're talking. Okay. Well, let's think that through. Let's see what we do with that. That's a very interesting idea, actually, us doing a bit of backwards compat. Xbox giving us the opportunity for that, making it nice and easy. So let's dive into our headlines. Oh, Orange Box. Yes, Plug Socket. Getting some of that in there. I'd love to go back and stream, I wonder, actually, how Half-Life 2's Xbox version would run on Series X. You know how dreadful it was originally with its frame rate. It was really poorly optimized.
I don't remember, but yeah, you'd hope it was just like that was a 3 games in one, wasn't it? 3 or was it 4?
It was multiple, wasn't it?
Budget price.
Wasn't it like a huge collection? I swear there was like loads in there. Maybe I'm making that up.
I thought it was Portal, Half-Life, and
Team Fortress.
Maybe
5 in 1. Plug socket saying in chat.
5 in 1.
Nice little live fact check there. Yeah, this is now Half-Life 2, Portal, Team Fortress 2. Okay, fine. Okay. So that's 3. That's not 5.
But my point was going to be, imagine how much certain game console publishers would sell that for now.
I mean, that's £100 collection, isn't it? In modern.
Yeah, even Valve would sell that for shitloads now. But
unbelievable. And it was
great.
It was Xbox and PlayStation. That was it, wasn't it? That was the only 2 platforms they released that thing on, which is just unbelievable value. So let's dive into our headlines. We're going to go through these now. We're going to kick off with upcoming games announced this month for Game Pass in October. We're partnered with the Xbox Guide. We have to do this as our opening. So
literally have to.
We literally have to. It's contractually obligated. So there was, I think, a bit of a perception I'm seeing online that it's considered quite a lean month so far. I suppose there is the element of, with Call of Duty coming in at the end, that's a big release into Game Pass and kind of a real water cooler moment, I think, for them, measuring its success and how perhaps the increase or not happens in terms of subscribers. So I wonder if it's a little bit of a softer month for that reason. Inscription here on screen, I'm not... Sorry, go on. What are you going to say?
There will be, a back half of the month where we get some different games as well. But certainly, something I've noticed as well is they're now taking the opportunity to talk about what's going on to Game Pass Standard, which we obviously didn't have as an issue before. Whereas now they're like, these 2 games, which I think is MLB and Open Roads, have gone to Game Pass Standard, but they're already on Ultimate. But that's like a news piece for Xbox. So I feel like they're kind of... It's giving them almost an opportunity to put a picture out, like a club reel picture of, look at all these games coming to Game Pass, whereas half of them are on Game Pass already.
And they're just going back to a different tier, a lower tier.
Yeah.
Oh, I see what you mean. So then, so you look at the graphic and they got 5 games. MLB in there as well, alongside Sifu, but actually MLB was already on there, it just was Ultimate only.
And I think you'll get Ultimate people that were like, I thought MLB was in already, or I thought Open Road was in already.
Right.
Maybe it dropped off and has come back, or it like refreshes their memory that it was in there. So
interesting.
I think it's a bit cheeky to kind of combine them in one graphic like that. To be fair, and yeah, I don't have much investment in any of these except for Sifu. I mean, Mad Streets looks quite interesting from a co-op party game point of view. I think it's sort of like a co-op ruler kind of thing.
Yeah, just looking at some of the animation though, I know I've struggled with both Gang Beasts and Party Animals, where it feels like you're just sort of flailing. It's not moves. It's more like, it's obviously it's by design, it's physics based, but I struggle with that sometimes in fighting games. I think that's why I liked Rumbleverse so much, because it wasn't like physics based combat. It was relying on set moves that you could then unlock or upgrade. This does feel a little bit sort of slapstick for me. I don't know.
Very much in that same category. I think it would depend if you can do combos or if you can block and stuff like that, which doesn't look like you can, but I'll do a bit of reading on it. It might be something we want to try.
Just to give it a shot, whereas I can wholeheartedly endorse Sifu. I actually got this. It was the first game I played on my PS5 when I bought my PS5, and this, I think at the time, had just been added into the PS Plus, either Extra or Premium. I can't remember which tier it was in, but oh no, it was Extra, because I didn't get the Premium one straight away. This is outstanding. Such great feel to the combat, and again, you mentioned combos there. I mean, this is the ultimate example of that. It's very, very sort of like quite high arc in terms of difficulty and challenge. It's quite a learning curve on this, but man, when it clicks together, it just feels so good. It's got a really interesting mechanic too, where every time you die, you age slightly. So the idea is, the notion of like most roguelikes where like you die and retain your unlocks or things you've learned towards your next run. It does that, and does it in a visual sense, showing your character sort of mastering abilities and then able to apply those skills to upgrade both your move set but your combos you have access to, and that's expressed then visually through their actual aging, which I think is such an interesting visual cue. It's not a major part of the gameplay. The roguelike element is, but the visual isn't. The big thing here is the interactivity, is the fact that you can spend sort of so much time interacting with the environment, using sort of dynamic combat, switching between different moves. I'm thrilled this is coming to Game Pass. I hope this finds a really nice wide audience.
Yeah, certainly the headline until Black Ops later in the month.
Yes, and maybe that second batch. We need to obviously see what's coming there. Next thing on our list for tonight is we're talking about Starfield Shattered Space. This is the first major of 2, apparently, expansions that are coming to Starfield. A bit like, again, I don't know whether I'm misreading the sentiment here, but much like the kind of wider response to that Game Pass announcement initially for this month, alongside the confusion of the whole Ultimate being dropped, games being dropped into Standard, I haven't seen a huge amount of conversation around Shattered Space. I know that Kind of Funny, Greg Miller, is a huge fan of Starfield, and he's been really bigging it up. But that's been the only sort of mainstream YouTube outlet that I've seen really pushing this and talking about it. Do you think there's a wider issue there, a sort of an apathy towards this game and Bethesda games in general? Or is it perhaps just easy to kind of delve into that console war narrative and not actually see what people are excited about?
I've seen quite a lot of hype for it
Nice.
on Xbox channels. I think maybe multi format. It's not getting the attention, but it's potentially landed a little bit wet. I think there were some glitches, typical Bethesda, around it not activating for some people, some texture glitches, which I think they were relatively straightforward workarounds. I don't know if people have got more problems than that, but also a little bit on the content side. I've read some lukewarm stuff about it. Some people are really positive, like giving it 8s and 9s, but much like the main game, I think might divide opinion a bit. And I think it's 30 quid as well, which is a lot for. I know it's an expansion, and we're kind of having to get used to that. I think the Elden Ring expansion was similar, but it's still, considering the main game is people will be spending 100 hours on that, and this is like a 10-hour max probably expansion for 30. I feel like it's asking quite a lot. For me, I would massively struggle, someone who hasn't completed Starfield, to pay 30 on top of that for a DLC pack, basically.
I wonder if part of that pricing is down to the fact that they expect a lot of people to be accessing this through Game Pass, as in the base game. So actually 30 quid on top of that when you've already got it, quote unquote, for free in your sub.
Yeah, I'm sure
that must be part of
strategy
that.
is to monetize a game with an expansion like this, and I think we'll see it more.
Yes. There was something actually I saw. It was actually odd to me at the time that they didn't charge separately for it, but Gears 5 had an expansion called Hive Busters. It was a full campaign expansion that focused on some side characters. It wasn't obviously tied into the main narrative like this is, but it was free for Game Pass Ultimate subscribers at the time when it first dropped. And it surprised me because I was expecting, given that Gears obviously is a first-party title, day and date, it's in there, that they didn't then separately charge for that. This maybe is in some ways response to that. They'd have seen probably the crazy player numbers that accessed Gears 5. That game had, and it still has, a dedicated community and a very long tail in terms of community support. I'm wondering if maybe they've looked at that and kind of gone, well, we need to, we've got 70 billy to get back, so let's try and find a way to sensibly monetize something that we know is hopefully going to connect and find an audience.
I think it was quite well done. Like, obviously, I'd rather have all the DLC and Game Pass, but I think it's unrealistic to expect that. But because they did the early access with the collector's edition or whatever it was, special edition, and
of course,
you got this DLC with it as well.
I think
that's quite a compelling argument. Like, I think the upgrade, you can get the upgrade to the special edition for 35 quid, but now you get a 30 quid expansion. You only get the one expansion with that, and then you get like digital art book or some crap.
Yeah, and then a lot of the benefits of paying for that digital upgrade,
exactly,
which was the early access, or they're kind of moot now, aren't they? They don't really make sense. So
yeah, they should have made it a bit. Well, we'll get on to the PlayStation approach with Horizon, but they should have maybe reduced the price of the upgrade. I think just I don't know. I guess it needs to be more than the actual expansion. It just feels a bit.
Just feel odd, doesn't it?
It's a lot to swallow.
Well, that's where it's the whole kind of paying for access to a game arbitrarily early. Sort of, I always find that slightly odd. That's just the release date, surely, and they've just.
But I do think with Game Pass, it's a way for them to monetize the games on top of Game Pass. I think we have to expect that. But it's kind of maybe it's a negative of Game Pass that they feel that they have to do that. It's a benefit that you get with like EA Play as well. I think we'll see it more and more where these trying to monetize early access.
Yeah, you know what? Actually, it's kind of expected when you think you're getting these sort of huge games installed day one. If you're an Ultimate subscriber now, they've made that clear that the day one is Ultimate, Standard is not. They've made that very clear. I think it's not. It's a bit muddled now, sort of what's included and what isn't. And I've seen some stuff that's retroactively been removed from what is now Standard and become Ultimate only, which at that part I find a bit messy. And there wasn't really a great way for them to handle that if they wanted to go with these wacky tiers. But I agree. I think we are going to see this more as a way of sort of addressing the need for additional revenue, which you'd then be losing that's cannibalized through subscription. So
yeah, I mean, it's your way, but there's this problem with games aren't making enough money. They're just too expensive to develop. It's a way of giving back to the developers. If you like Starfield that much and you think, oh, I didn't actually pay for it, it's a way of actually giving the developers some money. The special editions and all that, I think it's the same kind of thing. Early access. It's just a way to help fund development of these games that are costing more and more.
Well, speaking of helping to fund the development of games, or not, we have the completely ridiculous situation with Tango Gameworks, where they were binned off in that recent Xbox culling alongside Arcane Austin and a couple of other support studios for Bethesda. And then, out of nowhere, 11th hour, Tango getting ready to shut down. Krafton, publishers of PUBG, Callisto Protocol, and the upcoming Redacted, swept in, took on the team. A lot of those developers had obviously since found employment elsewhere. They were a team of about 120. A lot of them had since left, but a few of them have been retained. And although the ink's still drying on the actual IP and the acquisition, for all intents and purposes, Tango Gameworks lives. A lot of the original team have been brought back, and now, this week, we've seen confirmation by Krafton, by the sort of lead management up there, that Hi-Fi Rush 2, which was in about 6 months worth of pre-production before Microsoft binned them off, is going to continue. The team's exploring DLC for the original game as well. They're not going to rush out the sequel, but they are full steam ahead on that IP. Likely to be multi-platform as well. For clarity, in this, Microsoft still own Ghostwire Tokyo and
Evil Within.
Thank you. Brain blank. So Ghostwire Tokyo, Evil Within, they still retain the rights to that IP, but specifically Hi-Fi Rush have come with Tango under their new ownership under Krafton. This for me is this story has been like an antidote to 18 months of just an absolute horror of closures and terrible management choices, poor budgeting, and as a result, cost being to sort of the working developers and artists that have then subsequently lost their jobs or in fact had the entire studio shut down. This was like the one little sliver of hope that Krafton kind of coming in and taking this team on. You'd always hope that there'd be some investor that wasn't the Embracer Group. I'd always be very nervous with certain publishers investing, or Tencent maybe, that are very much sort of getting their fingers in all the pies, 30% ownership here and 20% ownership there. It's nice to see a publisher that's actually relatively consistent take them on and hopefully nurturing them to make the game that they wanted to make. It's a real feel-good story for me. I'm really chuffed to see them survive.
Yeah, your article on this was really interesting, and I think there must have been some connection, I think, between Krafton and Tango. I was reading in the original interview with them, as soon as we heard Tango was shutting, we got on a plane and went to talk to them, and it's like that's a bit weird. Like we wouldn't the amount of studios that have closed and the amount of people that have lost jobs. I think there must have been. They were probably already talking to someone at Tango, or there's some sort of relationship there, which is good. And yeah, I think they were saying, like you said, Microsoft had shut them down. The people had lost their jobs basically, so they've kind of hired the people that lost their jobs. It's not like a straight acquisition in the sense of they've gone to Microsoft and said, we want to take Tango, we want to take the name and the brand and their IP.
No, not at all. It was
picked
done.
up the developers.
Yeah. For all intents and purposes, it was finished.
Apparently, they're going to get like 70 to 80 of them in the end. They think.
Oh, amazing! That's so cool.
Didn't find jobs out of like you said, 100, 120. And
Which on a
Phil apparently
percentage
was quite
basis
good
is-
about.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Phil apparently was quite good about giving them the IP. So, it's an interesting one. I feel like it's a way of kind of softening the blow to people. I think being a gamer, a serious gamer himself, I think he will have known that the problem with Hi-Fi Rush, it didn't sell the numbers that they wanted it to do. A sequel isn't going to sell anymore unless you go full multi format, which they will do. But if he gave it to a different team at Microsoft, it's not going to sell any more than if Tango did it. So there's not really a lot of point in them keeping that IP. Evil Within, I think you could get a team like a Bethesda team make that, and it could do really, really good numbers. I just don't think Hi-Fi Rush is strong enough for what Xbox needs it to do. So,
yes, especially given that it was a proper shadow drop too. Like it was kind of they've gone quite.
It was badly. Yeah, it was badly.
They've gone quite quiet on that, haven't they? It was a very. I remember feeling in the moment like, holy shit, like a Tango Gameworks shadow drop title that came out of nowhere, developed for years. At the time when they were, that new format, the developer direct at the time was a new thing for them. Crazy hyper momentum that it built, and then it was almost a bit like the Netflix problem, which is when they throw stuff all out at once, it then just disappeared, and there was no conversation. And I feel like in the gaming space, you're reliant so much on those like follow-up streams or people sharing clips 3 weeks later, or then it goes into a sale and people then do that whole like, oh well, I just discovered this from a recommendation. That games, I think, like that, especially new IP that are single player, need that longer tail. They need that conversation to persist in order for it to continue finding an audience. So it's interesting to me now to see how Krafton have now taken this and see a future for it. It's a big show of faith in that brand, in that they didn't then try to go after Ghostwire Tokyo or Evil Within. They went for Hi-Fi Rush, and that was what they tried to acquire, and that's what they've succeeded in doing. So that to me says that there's real confidence in that brand and being able to build it. I also agree with you, likely to be multi-platform as well.
Yeah, the shadow drop was the issue for me. Like, it was exciting for us as gamers and Game Pass subscribers, but for me, the perfect way to do it is the way that often they do with like Rockstar do it quite often, and Bethesda do it quite often. Is the game's coming, they announce the game, but you get gameplay, the first gameplay, and then it's like 6 months later the game launches, and I think that's perfect.
That sort of short turnaround from announcement with gameplay to release. Hazelight really good at that. I remember A Way Out and It Takes Two both were very like I remember It Takes Two being revealed at the Game Awards, and it was released in March the next year, and that was like a crazy turnaround for that. But you
get something like Star Wars Outlaws, where I think early sentiment was really, really good, and they just keep talking about it and talking about it and talking about it, and like people, by the time it comes out, people are like, I know what this is, and I don't want it.
Could have been a Redfall issue there, because I feel like that game was talked about and mentioned a lot. It was discussed.
Well, it ends up not looking as good as it did in the first trailer. That's the problem. Whereas if you show gameplay for the first time 6 months ahead of release,
it's close.
That's the final game. Yeah.
Yeah, the game is essentially in closed beta, privately. Most of the content's locked. It's in a position where they actually can show what it's going to look like on launch day. I actually want, they kept, even though Dragon Age the Veilguard was announced a while ago, it was renamed as well, but it was announced a while ago, we didn't see gameplay of that for a long time. So I think this is the other version I think works, is they announce a game, then just go quiet, just cook for a while, and then when you come back, have something meaningful to show. That's where State of Decay then, I think, did such a bad job with their trailer at the showcase in the summer, because we hadn't seen anything for so long, and then all you showed us was an in-engine trailer that some of it I'm still questioning whether that was CGI or not, but, we still didn't see proper gameplay. Something like Dragon Age, they let that game cook, And then when it was ready to show, we saw the Game Informer deep dive. We saw like HUD-enabled gameplay and extended sessions, something that indie still hasn't done, which I think they desperately need to do. You've mentioned that many times before. A real fair criticism of that game is they're not showing it explicitly enough. But that, I think, is where something like Dragon Age, which had a longer release schedule, which didn't have that benefit of, like you said, like the 6-month turnarounds. This is where, if you're going to do that, come out with something meaningful. Show what the actual game is after all this time, and then you'll get people on side in a similar way.
Yeah, this is what we need from Battlefield. The next Battlefield. We
Yes.
talked about Battlefield, I think, last time. I don't want to see a CG trailer for Battlefield. I don't want to see, a CG multiplayer trailer. I just want to see, basically, a finished version of the game.
Do you know what makes me nervous is if you remember there was that run before the first Star Wars Jedi game came out from Respawn. There was 3 years in a row in EA press conferences where they went, "We're working on a Star Wars game," and then the next year was, "Here's some behind the scenes of concept art of a Star Wars game." Then they named it the next year, and then it was only the year after, 4 E3s later, that they then went, "Here's some gameplay."
Yeah, they just knew the strength of the license. And I think they felt the strength of the license could carry them, and that's the problem with Star Wars, I think.
Yeah, and then obviously wasn't. Yeah.
It used to carry it. We had fairly average games like Star Wars Bounty Hunter, Republic Commando, which I know are in a lot of people's hearts, but they weren't like incredible games. But we remember them all fondly because of the license.
Yes.
I think it's a bit harder now there's so many strong licenses that it's a bit harder now for it to have this.
This is not in one of our headlines, but you're talking about how the strength of licenses and people adapting them. Do bear with. I want to make sure I've live fact checked myself. So I saw the other day here we go. It's a subsidiary of Devolver Digital. Really, really great indie developer called Big Fan Games. It's a new publisher under Devolver that's just been formed as part of the Devolver sort of overarching brand, where their focus is helping indie developers adapt movies, comics, TV shows, and cult characters into video games. So like taking a more bespoke approach to licensed games. So rather than the studios that own the IP mandating what a game should be and how it should look and having some crazy short turnaround to hit like a film's release window, they're now basically being an indie publishing label that handles the business side. They secure the rights to say, whatever the big Marvel, Star Wars, Star Trek, whatever, and then allowing then indie teams to make the game they want to make in that universe. And it's a very interesting concept that I'm going to be keeping my little beady eyes on, and I'm hoping it comes to fruition, because I think there's huge potential in something like that in the indie space, having big licenses which will help with discoverability and help with audience awareness as well, not just discovering the title organically, but them being aware of what they're actually doing with it. Like, I think Aliens is a classic example. That franchise has had some great spin-off games in the last few years. Alien Isolation, Dark Descent. We've got another VR game coming out for that. So there's been some really interesting takes on that, and I hope this is the start of us maybe a renaissance of licensed titles that aren't just necessarily a cash grab. They're not trying to meet an arbitrary release date. So it'd be interesting to see if anything comes of that.
It'd be nice if some smaller licenses would come under that, because I feel like we tend to get Marvel and Star Wars and Lego and
Lord of the Rings a lot.
The smaller films, smaller licenses that would actually be really good for games. Stuff like where we had the Wolf Among Us game, things like that. Would just be nice to see more of it. I don't think we get enough of it.
No, I agree. So I'd seen as well, one of our sort of other headlines we're going to be covering tonight is Death Stranding 2. Now, I'm a little bit out of the loop on this. I haven't really been following the story, sort of where it's at. Are we still looking at next year for that? Is it still 2025?
I think they're just going to at least give us a date next year. We're going to see it next year, basically, in depth.
Right.
So whether it comes out next year, I think maybe, but I guess it will be at one of Sony's things next year.
And potentially then...
Did you play the first one?
I did, actually. Really, really enjoyed it. It's something... It's very, very different, very slow-paced, but surprisingly, I think maybe I was just in the mood for just being in a world, and it ticked that box for me. I didn't play a huge amount of it actually ended up being distracted by some of the, like, side missions and kind of like just exploring the world. They didn't spend a huge amount of time in the narrative. But it's Kojima unhinged. I mean, that was the parts I did play, like Troy Baker playing sort of a really wacky, sort of like just uncontrolled villain. I think it was just great fun. Great cast. He's obviously, incredibly creative. It could potentially be a real centerpiece of what's shaping up to be a very strong year for them if rumors about Wolverine making an appearance next year, and also Ghost of Yutai. There's Yutai.
Don't ask me.
Yeah, tough time making a call on that.
It's Plug Socket saying it's Kojima. It's going to be good. It's definitely, you can tell it's a Kojima game, can't you? But I have big reservations about OD, which is the Kojima game coming to Xbox.
So I'm glad.
And it's
if you hadn't said something, I was about to, because I'm looking at it. Go, when the creator can't really describe what it is, that's a big red flag for me. That gives me huge Molyneux energy, Peter Molyneux energy, where you can't actually say what it is.
I forget what it's called. There's another, like a Metal Gear Solid style game that Kojima's doing again for PlayStation, I think. And it's like they say to Kojima, we just we want a typical Kojima game, basically. And then I feel like the condition of him doing an exclusive for Microsoft is like, you have to let me do what I want with no conditions. And
they're like, please, we want a Kojima game. And he'll make something mental. Yeah, so who knows how that's going to pan out.
It's interesting, and I think I like that they're giving him the freedom to do something, it sounds like it's going to be like multimedia or whatever. You have to say fair play for giving him the freedom to do it, but
I love, by the way,
part of me would rather just have
just something more standard Kojima. Totally. I'm just seeing Plug Socket coming to chat here saying, "Oh God, Peter and Lionhead Studios." Oh no, even those guys know. That's really funny. So on the Sony side, something that's slightly, I think, a bit underhand. I really wasn't. When you told me about this, I really wasn't. I hadn't caught this at all. So this was all briefed by you. Horizon Remastered, which is offering a £10 upgrade to existing owners of Horizon Zero Dawn to access the remastered copy. Horizon Zero Dawn has gone up in price. So those that don't own it, it's now increased. The base thing has increased in price, which then I'm imagining that then, what, do you have to then pay £10 on top of that? Or are you able to just buy remastered? I
think you have to pay. I think everyone has to pay, because this is how PlayStation do it, is they do these remasters because they can monetize them, whereas Microsoft don't tend to do remasters. I can't think of many that we've had. They'll just do like something with a patch. It won't be the same, the same level of care. This is being rebuilt in the same engine as the sequel, isn't it? I think, but there's a lot of remasters that you get on PlayStation, and they obviously do quite well. But yeah, I think it was £16 and it went up to 35.
And then you pay the £10 on top of that.
Then you pay the 10.
Oh man! See, they did the same thing with the more egregious one I remember from the beginning of the PS5 era was that they bundled Spider-Man Remastered, the PS5 version of that game, with Ultimate Edition copies of Miles Morales, which was a budget price release by itself that was then like a £70 Ultimate Edition. And you couldn't buy Spider-Man Remastered as a standalone game. Your PS4 copy would play the PS4 version on PS5. There was no upgrade path. You had to own the Ultimate Edition of Miles Morales to access Spider-Man Remastered to get that on top. Really, really egregious, especially because then 4 years into the gen, Spider-Man Remastered was unbundled from that and you could buy it separately. Really shit. Really, and it was to tie in with Spider-Man 2 that was then coming out by that point. It was just really poorly handled, and I wish... This is where, a stronger Xbox makes Sony have to step up a little bit and avoid some of these sort of slightly more egregious things that they've been doing quietly. Some of the pricing for certain things, and,
Xbox has a lot of stuff in like this in their favor, where I feel like they make good consumer first decisions. They make some bad ones, but they make some good consumer first decisions. But unless you're like a hardcore gaming enthusiast, you don't hear about them. Stuff like Red Dead, when Red Dead I think went to 60 FPS, the original Red Dead, and then Rockstar did a new a current gen
re-release, didn't they?
version,
Yeah.
re-release. And obviously they didn't do an Xbox One because it's basically that
It
you
was.
already
It
had
was.
it for free
It
on
arguably
Xbox.
ran better than the remastered one because the backwards compatibility had got it running better. You know.
But no one's going to see that. And in fact, if you saw, oh, they've re-released Red Dead on PlayStation, but they haven't re-released it on Xbox. That's how you would see it as like a casual consumer. Whereas in fact it was free on Xbox, but it's just that sort of messaging doesn't get across.
Which is another sort of systemic problem, isn't it? Is sort of like those decisions that are consumer friendly. Yeah, the things that sort of make them, you know, a little bit more on the face value for consumers, a really great bet, a really sort of enticing proposition. That's the stuff that gets buried underneath sort of, you know, studio closures and poor management and games that should be being cultivated well and not. You know, that becomes the narrative. You know, indie going to PS5 becomes the narrative instead of this being the next big Bethesda game.
They need to be a bit more cutthroat and a bit edgier with their marketing. Like
Sony do.
Yeah, well after the State of Play, where they were like, all these games are coming to Xbox, by the way, and on social media they said that. But you know, social media's a bit of a vacuum. I would like to see, like, you know, if I was Xbox, I would never forgive them for what they did in response to the Xbox One announcement.
Oh my god,
because that was bad, and I would still be milking that now if I was Xbox. I'd still be doing everything I could to, like, you know, you have to buy this on PlayStation, you don't have to buy it on Xbox or whatever.
Yes, totally.
They're too nice. We go.
Yeah, that kind of they've sort of taken such a consumer centric approach that they've forgotten how to market things and have that make sense. You know, it's tricky. So speaking of marketing, God, the segues have been smooth. We've had Ubisoft commenting recently that they've, you know, one of the reasons what speculation actually that one of the reasons behind, or one of the many reasons behind Assassin's Creed Shadows being delayed was Star Wars Outlaws underperforming. Hit 1 million sales, and which is great for most games, but when you're a title probably as larger budgeted as this, given the studio as well, Ubisoft Massive are an enormous team, and the quality of the visuals here and the amount of story content, like, you know, you can just so imagine that this was an extremely expensive game to make.
And the license costs, presumably. I don't know if they would get a percentage of the sales or if there's a fee for the license, but they're probably not even taking all the revenue that they would normally take from this.
Almost certainly not. You know, Lucasfilm Games are going to be taking their crispy one. You know, they're going to be taking that. So it's interesting. I don't know if I want to necessarily buy into the reactionary Twitter side that it was female protagonist and you couldn't choose a male and therefore had less appeal. From what I'd seen of game, and I haven't played it yet, but from what I've seen of gameplay and seen of some of the reviews, is actually, you know, it seemed like more of a Swimming in Sevens game. And
I think
I'd expect the Swimming in Sevens game to be hitting kind of 800k to 1 million if it's those sort of, you know, Focus Interactive and those sort of, like, you know, AA titles. This clearly isn't a AA game, but it's almost like some of the reviews were making it out to be that, and that maybe is contributed to a perception around it.
I think it was because it looks great. Certainly in the first gameplay footage we saw, it looked amazing. Or at least you could see it was going to sell. Imagine it was going to sell ridiculous numbers. I think it was shown at the Xbox show, and I had a feeling about it then that it was going to be relatively average. I don't know what it was, but I think it's just people hyped it up because it's Star Wars. It's like an open world Star Wars game, which we haven't had really. It had the, like, flying down to planets, which Starfield didn't have, although it's, you know, it's like kind of not in the same way as No Man's Sky, but and then when it's launched, it's just like you say, it's 7s, low 8s. It's just hasn't lived up to what people were hoping for from the first open world Star Wars game. I know it's not on Steam, which I think is I don't know how you can release a game on PC and then complain about sales when you haven't put it on Steam. It's like your own stupid fault. Just release the game on Steam.
Yeah, and I wonder because 1 million sales. I wonder if that includes Ubisoft Plus, if they've bundled that in, and how many people are getting it through the $14.99. You know, they could pay that. You
It
know,
would be interesting to know how many people have done that for a month to play it and
yeah,
then been like, this isn't for me
and
because
then
it's a
binned off the
7.
sub. Yeah, yeah. And how much of those are actually, is it million players or a million sales? Because that's very, very different metrics.
Well, and is this must be the first. I guess there's been a couple of Assassin's Creeds that have come out on that service, but this must be the biggest release that they've had
Day one.
where it's been like, I want to get that for a month to try this new game
Yes,
because
and the
it's
early
you know what
access
you're
was
getting with
tied to
Assassin's
that.
Creed.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it'd be maybe they're struggling with, because I'm sure Xbox had this problem where they released Starfield and it sells a million, but then they've got like 10 million people playing it because it's on Game Pass and they're happy
Mm.
with that. But maybe Ubisoft aren't used to that kind of subscription service taking all the revenue. Um, and the problem is, whereas on Game Pass you do have a bit of a better catalog or pipeline of stuff coming up. Like if you subbed for Outlaws, then what are you paying for the next month
Right.
and the next month and the next
Especially if you're
month?
done with it as well. If you're not then
Yeah,
planning
now
on
they've delayed
continuing.
Assassin's Creed as well. Like you would unsub now until Assassin's Creed comes out and then maybe get it again.
Because yeah, there's nothing else that they've got that's a major release between now and then. So yeah,
Yeah,
it's a strange one. I don't buy into the narrative. I think it's actually more about the game itself. I think the
I
reviews
agree. Yeah.
were quite middling in many ways. It was not a sort of clean sweep of 8s and 9s. There was a lot of 7s in there. A lot of
I
sort
think
of
it's got the
like
Concord problem, and in the same way that people are
yeah,
saying Concord is, it's the woke stuff that means it's failed. I
no,
think it's just an average
just an average
game,
game.
and
Yeah.
in a crowded space. Um,
Because also, let's be fair, if you're going to level that, there was a very, very loud minority of idiots that were complaining about The Last of Us Part 2, saying how that was sort of, that the storyline was sort of completely whitewashed in the sense of it being sort of like, not racially, but the notion of it being sort of like, oh, we need to tick these boxes and it's not actually about telling the best story, it's about being quote unquote inclusive for the sake of it. Nope, that did not stop that game from absolutely exploding in sales. It's one of their most
and people
successful
people say
titles.
it, people say it about Horizon. People are saying it about Dragon Age. We had like last week or the week before,
Yeah.
people were really complaining about it. You don't hear it now
No,
because the quality of the
and
gameplay
and
boxes that they've
Horizon,
released is
it's one of their most
exactly.
fastest selling franchises. It's the reason why it's continuing. It's
Yeah.
got its Lego spin off because clearly it's done enough to justify that. So don't buy into that at all. I think that stuff is really weak commentary. But it should be about the game. It doesn't matter what gender the protagonist is. If you've made a game which is mechanically basic, dull, or just not particularly innovative, or any combination of those three, you're going to then expect softer sales because the reviews then reflect that.
Yeah.
So
Agreed.
yeah, tricky. Moving on now to alters. Now I have absolutely no familiarity with this, but I've heard it's a really interesting comments. Both we talked about it offline. I've seen people mention about the fact that obviously it's a quite a surprisingly complex game for what is essentially an indie title. Now delayed to next year. What's the scoop with alters? Give me the kind of the cliff notes on this from 11-bit. Just
So
pull up the trailer now.
yeah, so it's just a cool like sci-fi setting. It's like just a big Game Pass release that was supposedly coming out this year. We're getting very close to, it's TBC. It was TBC 2024, so we didn't have a date, and then obviously they've just delayed it. So kind of, I think it's a bit like a survival game, but without the kind of you know, you go digging outside to
Mm.
collect resources and stuff. But kind of the twist is that the only way this guy can survive is by creating a copy of himself that then can do a different task. So and they all, I think, depending on certain factors, they have a different personality. So he ends
Oh,
up
cool.
with you'll end up with like 10 of the same guy, but depending on what happened, I think it's maybe to do with dimensions. What happened earlier in his life in that dimension, he'll be he'll be really angry, or be really depressed, or he'll be overweight or something.
That's really
So I think, yeah,
interesting.
later in this trailer you can see that. I mean, there's a few games that have done this kind of character cloning mechanic, but for me it's this kind of sci-fi setting
Mm.
in conjunction with that stuff that kind of sets it apart. And the
This
visual fidelity looks really
Yeah,
high.
this is Game Pass putty for me. This is like exactly what I want that service to be, cultivating a new IP and it being a sort of single player indie release. This is exactly what Game Pass is for. It really ticks when I look at it at games like this. I just feel like it then covers the spectrum. You've got the AAA, the day one titles, those sort of AA titles that might not be day and date, but they'll come in within a few months. I think Atlas Fallen's a perfect example of that being just right as an inclusion for Game Pass. They've done their initial sales. Now they're going to have second wind with that, with their Game Pass deal. And then indie games then leveraging a day one launch or some period of exclusivity. Those three major strands of gaming, Game Pass all cater for, and this definitely fits into that. Any delay is going to get a vote of confidence from me. I think it's smart for Ubisoft to do it. I think smart for these guys to do it too. So on board with that. Definitely a watch this space for the alters, I think.
And when you've got the Game Pass money that you know you're going to get, I don't know if there's any restrictions about. I don't think Microsoft would be holding anyone to release dates. So knowing that you can delay because your company's got the finance coming in from Microsoft because of the Game Pass release, I think must be nice. Instead of, you feel that games are often rushed out to meet like financial reports and things.
This would, if I was in their position, you'd sort of be thinking, well, I actually have confidence I can let this simmer for a minute. And it's okay to delay. It's not going to affect our bottom line because we have, like you said, to release it like within a specific fiscal year. This is them being able to utilize the cushion of a Game Pass deal and giving them that flexibility to make the game they want to make too, and launch it to a ravenous audience. So just that side of it, there's plenty we can unpack with the Xbox in terms of their wacky. I think the new tier system they've done is terrible and it's going to confuse the messaging. I don't like it at all. They need to just get rid of any paid multiplayer requirement when they binned off gold. It was literally there on a platter for them to sort it out, and they didn't. So that side of it, the way that is advertised and their messaging around it, has a lot of work that he's doing. But the alters, I think, really shows the promise of what the service can offer, and giving them more time to cook is only going to be a good thing. I fully be on board with any kind of delay like that. Just make it a better game from it. That's a good thing for me. Final thing for tonight for our tidbit headlines is Pal World. We've got some. It's been a really weird journey for this game. Nintendo obviously are quite litigious generally, and have obviously swiped the ban hammer at them. I played maybe half an hour maximum of the game preview version on Xbox and just hated it. Like I couldn't.
It's not your sort of game.
It's really
not my sort of game.
Yeah, definitely didn't have any sort of like. I haven't followed it since.
Yeah, I think because we haven't talked about it, I just wanted to put it on for.
Makes it interesting though.
Today, because it's coming to mobile, it's come out on PlayStation. It was shadow dropped at Tokyo Game Show, everywhere except Japan because of Nintendo. I just thought it'd be interesting to talk about. From my point of view, I mean, it's not my sort of game, but I can see, because it's multiplayer and because it's got that crafting kind of element that kind of the really streamable games have, like multiplayer and kind of crafting elements. It's kind of a ticket for success, and the developers learned how to do it. It's kind of a Stardew Valley story where they learned how to develop games while they were building it. So they've obviously made a lot of money out of it, so they can afford to hopefully defend themselves against Nintendo. But I've seen a lot of people talking about, because Nintendo are relying on patents for this, patents that they took out after Power World was released, supposedly. A lot of people are like, this could be quite bad for the industry if this succeeds. The number of games that are kind of borrowing elements from other games that you could just release get a patent for in Japan and say, whatever, a game with we've patented inventory management and we're going to sue everyone who's got an inventory system in a game, because I think supposedly the one that's the issue is collecting creatures with a ball patent.
Yes, I saw plugs already mentioned the Pokemon enslavement was a big issue there.
So, which is kind of fair enough, but there's more similar games to Pokemon than Power World. Obviously, there's the creatures, which some of them do appear to borrow from Pokemon, but Pokemon have also stolen many, many designs from other companies. So I think it will be bad for obviously bad for is it Pocket Pair, bad for the industry if it goes through. But I'm also not entirely sure. I think they will probably be okay, just everywhere except Japan anyway.
What a
But
piping
it's
hot mess of a scenario. Like, you are wading into some swampy waters if you're going to be going for some kind of Pokemon rip. You know, that's tough. That's a really...
yeah.
You're rolling the dice there. I think, much like the Alters, I think it's a bit of a watch this space, isn't it? Let's see how this develops over time. Like you said, PS5 Shadow Drop. So that's going to find a whole new audience now. So, well, speaking of PS5... Here's our deep dive for tonight. We discussed the PS5 Pro and the reveal. We also covered the state of play last week. But something I really wanted to talk about and kind of put to you was the idea that, first of all, PS5 Pro pre-orders still available all through the Sony website. They're not sold out. PS5 Pro's 30th anniversary bundle, the big boy pants one, sold out. But I imagine very limited quantities.
Hell. Yeah.
Getting scalped left, right, and centre. You know, but the mainline PS5 Pro, just the normal 699, not selling out. A reaction to price, potentially.
I don't remember, but I've seen people saying that the PS4 Pro didn't sell out, and that generally these mid-gen refreshers don't sell out. I think they should have released the limited, the 30th anniversary one. They should have done that in more numbers, and they could have put the price up even, because it looks fantastic. I can see why people really want it, and it's typical PlayStation.
Very Nintendo as well, isn't it?
I think that, yeah, but I mean they do it like the Portal thing sold out, so they can say, oh, it's in such really high demand. I don't know why many people really want that. I think it helps them generate headlines to have very limited supply. PS5 launch the base console, when it launched, that was obviously stock shortages because everyone was suffering from that. But I think they have in the past artificially limited stock to kind of generate scarcity, and the people that suffer are the consumers. I mean, we had this bombshell from you last week where you're getting one. You can't wait.
Well, I haven't. Okay, so let's hang on. Let's defuse the bomb. Hold on a moment, just before we do.
No one's doing a trade-in deal, so that's not gonna happen.
No trade-in deal exists. So, like I said to you, I need a trade-in deal. I've got to have a trade-in deal, but I wasn't seeing one. Plugsocket mentioning that. I'm just going to go to chat to kind of segue, get the heat off me. Plugsocket mentioning it's being scalped for 5K in some places. Yeah, well. Fuckers, I just hate it so much. Wish there was a better way to defend against that. But now redirecting that spotlight back onto me.
Just quickly, did you see? I think in Japan you have to prove that you own the PS.
For like 30 hours of gameplay.
Yeah, well,
crazy.
I don't know how exactly you. But to be fair, I know on the Xbox side, you'd be able to sign into your account. They could do it to only people with a certain gamer score, or there's ways they could do that. So actually, that if it was linked to PSN or something, that was actually quite an interesting way of rewarding people with like a limited edition.
Yeah, or maybe like early access to it, or first refusal on a pre-order, maybe.
Yeah, like with concert tickets, like if you're on a mailing list, you get a few days ahead of the rabble.
That makes sense to me, rather than just putting all the stock up and then inevitably scalpers taking it. It's just crazy. But let's get. I'm in the oven right now. I'm cooking. I'm cooking. I'm marinating on this. Let's go. So I made it very clear I wanted a trade-in deal. That's what would get me in. I want to get rid of this this lump that I got sitting on my desk right now, and I want to upgrade to the big boy pants when I can get money off it using this.
How? Well, you can just sell it.
Well, yeah, I could do that. Good idea, actually. Thank you for that.
What would you get? $250?
Yeah, I don't know what CEX would be taking for something like that at the moment. I imagine that price is going to plummet in November when people all try and do this. So if I'm going to do it, I'll probably be getting rid. I'll be getting rid and cashing out. So then I'm ready.
We need to check. We need to make a note for System Link to check when the anniversary edition comes out, what CX are selling it for?
Hmm.
Because they're the worst. I guarantee you, there's people at CEX. I'm gonna get sued for saying this. That go on and buy these consoles to sell in
No,
CEX stores
you can't be sued for the truth. Um,
an inflated price.
yeah,
Um,
can't be called that as litigious when you're just telling the truth. And I'm right in there with you, buddy. I'll swim in that swamp. But I've understood what I use these consoles for, which is that when I wanted the next gen platforms, I knew that because I think don't forget I've recently sort of in the last couple of years got a decent PC as well for gaming, so like I've dipped a toe into that space. I always favor performance over quality modes every time on console. And I know I do it because I've realized how important it is for that smooth gameplay. I'm not a maniac. I'm not a PC. Like, I need 120 frames because I think that's silly. I think the human eye can only see like 144 frames. So, like, I just don't think there's... To someone say, like, my Battlefield game runs at 230 FPS. I don't see the benefit of that and never will. But I've seen, like, VRR displays where you have some games like Gears of War, Starfield, offering like a 40 frames per second mode that then up-reses, utilizes those quality settings with a 40 frames per second option. Really like all of that. Big Manny's back. Good evening. CX also, Plug Socket mentioning CX sells for like 300, 350. Don't know how much you'd get though. Yeah, good point. Need to look into that. I know what my tendencies are as a gamer, as a console-first gamer, which is that I choose performance over quality every time. So then when Mark Cerny talked about, that was a very, very clever and targeted bit of marketing for me, because unlike Xbox, which is very broad and very unspecific, at least with Sony, disagree or not with some of their practice, I can say very clearly that they have marketed this console at me, at what I'm actually doing with my games, which is choosing performance over quality. Now, I know I've seen...
Also,
Go on.
just quickly, also to be fair, PlayStation has more 60 FPS games. It's generally Xbox that have had the ones that have launched at 30.
Right.
I don't know the first party PlayStation games that have launched at 30, if there are any. I think that has generally been a focus for PlayStation in general, is that performance over quality.
Definitely.
Not that we've seen games look worse on
no,
PlayStation
and then
or anything. It's just...
they've definitely then got a crispy 30 frames per second mode, but again, I've always found them to be very choppy. I do struggle with that sometimes if they're not sort of like, well, I think Starfield, has one of the best 30 frames per second modes out there because it's so smooth, which is impressive actually given the scale of that game. Thank you id Software for getting involved, but I know that that's my preference as a gamer. I as a console first gamer, I choose those performance modes every time. So to have something that's marketed at me saying that, well, we're gonna mitigate the trade-off, run things in quality-like settings, but have still the performance that you'd want. That's very enticing for me. And I looked at a lot of the games, and there isn't a huge library there. I think I need a bit more clarity on, say, that PS5 boost mode, which apparently will do a similar thing to the Xbox backwards compatibility, where older titles are up-resed. PS4 did the same thing. They had a really nice little boost mode option in there. But I need clarity on that. Sony are being cagey, which makes me wonder how much is going to actually be available at launch. Give me an explicit list as well, please. Show me exactly what PS5 Pro officially supported games from the current gen releases, not like a boost mode backwards compatible thing. I want to know what my definitive list is before I'd even look at it properly. But it definitely spoke to me, and it has made me look at some certain games where we're not going to get a mid-gen Xbox upgrade. Quite frankly, I don't think the Series X needs one particularly. I think if you're...
Well, no, it increases the disparity to Series S as well.
Yes, exactly.
Wise.
So then, and I think if you're in a position to looking for a mid-gen upgrade, the X would be your mid-gen upgrade if you bought an S at launch. You'd look at that path that's kind of already set for you. I don't know how many people are actually doing that. I think if you've bought an S, you keep an S.
But
and that's it.
I think definitely, though, the jump from S to X is much more significant than the jump from PS5 to PS5 Pro.
Yeah,
in that I think you can definitely just look from a distance at a TV that's playing an S version, and you can tell, we got features that aren't even in S versions that are in X now.
Yeah.
But I could definitely see why you're interested. I was going to ask, are there certain games that you're like, I wish I could play that in 60, or I wish that looked a bit better? Because Definitely, it should come down to the list of games. And I think for a lot of people, it's Final Fantasy, which is terribly optimized and runs really badly.
Mm.
And Digital Foundry have had, have looked at it, and it looks so much better on the PS5 Pro. Part of that though is because the base console, it's the
Really
game
struggles.
is really badly optimized. So
Yeah.
it's kind of yeah. I don't know how much for some of the games that Mark Cerny showed. Barely you could barely perceive the difference in some
Yeah,
of them.
so
I think first party
Yeah.
PlayStation games, it's maybe not going to have the impact because they'll have been well optimized to begin with. But
Yeah.
it's like if there's so I was just curious if there's any third party stuff or
Um.
anything that sticks out.
Yeah. So, and actually, on that point about first party games, I remember seeing I played a lot of Last of Us Part 2's remastered version. I'm playing the no returner mode a lot with my wife Kit, and excuse me. I've certainly noticed compared to say the single player that the no return mode, especially in performance, character models do look quite soft in their design. I'm sort of seeing, I see the difference more between cutscene and gameplay in that game when you're running it in performance mode, and I find that the quality mode is particularly choppy. That is a Naughty Dog problem, though. I've seen that before. Their quality modes are crispy as hell, but they do not run well. And I think again, limitation of the hardware. So that's something that's a specific first party example, because I also agree with you from that same Mark Cerny thing where I felt like he really targeted me cleverly. I also think when he was zooming in on Ratchet and Clank banners in the background, he's like, as you can see, the pixels are so much more defined, and it's like it was barely any difference. I didn't care about that at all. That made me eye roll heavily. So I think there's certain titles where the impact it simply just isn't being seen or isn't felt. I saw a Digital Foundry piece about an F1 game that looked stunning, so that was a really nice.
I can see why it speaks to you from the performance point of view. For me, as not quite as into performance side, I would need something like with Gran Turismo, where it didn't have ray tracing. Now it will have ray tracing. I'd need that in more games, and
Yes.
I think that probably isn't going to happen in many cases. But I think it is going to be more about FPS improvements, which isn't isn't generally something that.
And specifically FPS improvements that then don't sacrifice the visuals so much, because they have those performance modes already. It's just that they're softening the visuals. I think something like Space Marine, Alan Wake, Dragon Age, they're three games that jump to mind where I kind of go, I'd love to run these, particularly something like Alan Wake.
Wake, it would be great.
I would, because I know that they're also going to be including the full PC suite of ray tracing features, maintaining it at 30 for that stuff, but the performance mode at 60 is going to take the quality mode settings. So they've got a bit more, like I remember when the PS4 Pro came out, that it was having games giving you choices, and I love choice in visual fidelity and being able to fiddle with those settings. So
I'm guessing you played Alan Wake in performance, did you?
I did. Yes. Ran brilliantly in performance mode. I can't knock that at all. But I definitely saw... I think that game is helped because its art style's so strong. So in a game like that, I think that a lot of the performance mode graphical cutbacks in order to get that frame rate target, a lot of that's mitigated by the fact that the presentation in Alan Wake is incredible. The art style, the lighting, it kind of... the quality of it shines through despite the fact that there's obviously lower texture detail to hit that 60 frames. I always prefer the frame rate to be really, really smooth and solid. So I'm happy to take that visual hit. Someone then comes along, offers me a box and upgrade that I don't think is an equivalent coming from Xbox, which tends to be my main platform, that would allow me to maybe take some single-player games and play them in a way that my PC couldn't handle, because really and truly my PC is kind of 1080p 60. It can run stuff comfortably in full HD, but anything beyond that is no chance. So the idea of having a sort of high-fidelity 4K console that can run stuff at 60, even with certain extra features like a little bit of upscaling here or ray tracing there, that for me is tangibly quite exciting. Yeah.
So you'd sell your PS5 for $250, we think.
Yeah, I think
then
so.
You've got another $450 on top to get a PS5 Pro. That's just
price of a current PS5. So I'd be on board with that if I could.
You've got PS5.
I do, but I wanted a better one. But yeah, that's...
But then, so this is what we were going to talk about.
Yes.
because it's coming out like November, is it? We're gonna have Switch 2. I mean, some people are saying March next year, but I don't know what the thinking is on that now. That's going to be 400.
Well, that's
And
good.
then-
Okay, let's system link it. Let's system link this. Price point. Do you think $399 for Switch 2?
I think at least, yeah.
I think that's crazy for a Nintendo console. Crazy.
Well, what was Switch 1?
2.7?
350 was it? 2.7 was it?
279 at launch.
Was it?
Yeah.
I don't know how you can make that hardware at that price. You can certainly make a Switch 1 at it because it's just a mobile phone with a big screen, but
$349.
I mean that's not much less. You're like, oh,
yeah,
$399.
Yeah, $399.
Crazy.
No, $349 because it sounds better. It sounds better. That's not as big of an ask.
I wish you'd have gone a bit cheaper.
$329. $329. I'll lock it in. $329. $329. Lock it in. John Lock. So I'm saying $329 for Switch 2. There you go. It's on the air. You're saying what? $399? Are we locking it?
Yeah, sure.
Lock it. So that's locked.
Do we think one SKU?
Yeah, Nintendo aren't mental at launch. They do their SKUs later. They do the DS Lites, DS XLs. They do the stuff like Switch Lite, OLED Switch. That's the news cycle for them. They love a redesign 2-3 years in. One SKU at launch. You're only getting one SKU. And I think Xbox do the same thing because they potentially, again, we're talking about release timing. If we're looking at a handheld, I've been thinking about what we talked about last week. I do think the handheld comes first. I think it's before the next gen starts. They use that as their entry point, right, to generate some positivity. People then they go, oh, I'd like to have this, but a high quality version. They then go, cool, here's our home console, our one home console SKU, because we've got our handheld SKU in 25. So yeah,
that could be what Nintendo are waiting for, is for the Microsoft handheld price.
What, and then switch to like kind of
which will certainly be over 400 or over.
$499? Do you think?
No, I don't know.
Come on, you're confident on Switch.
I don't know where to.
You got to get in the Xbox guide.
I wouldn't say I'm confident on Switch 2.
Uses analytics.
I think what they might do is have Switch 1, have a new SKU of Switch 1, or OLED is then the base Switch 1 SKU they sell alongside Switch 2, because the games are all going to be cross.
You'd hope so.
Gen for like 3 years, as they do, or more. It's going to be fully, forward and backwards compatible for a little bit of time. So it wouldn't surprise me if they see. Well, I don't know what Switch 1 is, and that's still got to be probably still the same price it was when it came out, isn't it? Unless you go for the light one.
Well, nothing's sure now for that either, because Xbox and PlayStation both put up the console pricing.
Exactly. So they're not going to release Switch 2 at the same price or close to the price that Switch 1 is currently selling at. So that's my thinking.
I still think they'll look at Xbox's price, which will be high. I agree with you on the $499 or above. I think Switch 2 comes in at Switch. Yeah, I know it's coming. $329. I think they're going to come in. They're going to really undercut that, and it's going to be cheap Joy-Cons, piece of shit. Like they're going to just be, cheap plastic with a wacky IR sensor. It's going to be terrible. So it's going to be $329.
So Switch OLED is $299. So you're saying that the Switch 2 is is like 30 quid more than
they got the OLED, but then how much better is Switch 2 actually going to be?
It's got to be significant. It's got to be significantly better, because Switch 1 isn't good.
I don't know, Nintendo.
It will be. I think it will be the Series S.
I think it's going to struggle. I think it's going to struggle to compare. They don't care about power. They need to make sure that Nintendo goes on well.
Series S is underpowered. The parts are readily available. It was fine during a stock shortage, so they'll be able to get the stuff. I
suppose the quality of those mobile chips that they use for Switch are better now than they were 7 years old, this console. So those chips have been iterated on several generations worth in their development cycle. And then you've got the custom approach which they always take for that platform. So let's
wait and see.
Wait and see. Left, right, center. It's $329.
Okay.
OLED? No, they're not going to do more than one SKU. No.
Will it be OLED? Switch to OLED standard.
Standard beans.
Because like Steam Deck, I think there's an OLED SKU, but there's also non-OLED SKUs. It would be interesting because it's not a hardcore enthusiast console. They would go with an OLED as
No.
this base.
So therefore, I suppose maybe not as a base, but I definitely don't think they do it as an option. I think it's one console
Yeah, I
SKU.
agree. Yeah.
Uh,
It gives, like you
yeah.
say, it gives this typical Nintendo. It gives them something
To do
to
later.
do.
3 years
Yeah.
in, OLED Switch 2. Like, I could very much see that. That is more likely than anything you and I have predicted so far tonight is that we
I,
get like a second Switch 2 SKU 3 years in.
I don't even think the Xbox handheld SKU would be OLED as the base one
Not as
because
the
I think
base
they'll
one.
want it to get it cheap. I think they would do two though with an OLED one.
Yes, I think
would do that.
Xbox is more likely to do the Steam Deck model with the
Yeah.
multiple SKUs for handheld. Maybe two. I think that's smart. Maybe some wacky bundles that might include Game Pass as well, the cloud streaming, etc. Plug socket just coming slightly off topic. John Locke would be a cool name for a costume. I throw that vernacular in. It's such an in-joke for Mike and I. John Locke, the famous character from the TV series Lost. If we're talking about locking in a bet, it's always referred to as a John Locke. So there's a little window into our lingo. I think you're just circling back to PS5 Pro. I think your point about the optimization of first party is fair. I think they've done such a good job generally of giving people choice of performance and quality. They're taking that, I think, as a basis and going, well, cool, let's not have to sacrifice that. Let's keep the quality in it whilst maintaining frame rate. That is the sell for me. If there is like enough games that I think have a longer tail that I'm going to enjoy, so things like Dragon Age, I would consider now buying on PlayStation because that third-party version
Oh shit.
it is PS5 Pro enabled. If I'm really wanting to buy into that series, am I going to want the best version? Yes, I'm going to want the best version of that game. So, and especially because my PC would just catch fire, wouldn't handle it. So, if I want to go for that sort of top-end version, it'd be that.
So my question really is because you'll get Switch 2 at launch, that's guaranteed, presumably.
So I don't, upset the Nintendo family that I've got going on right now. So, yeah.
Yeah. Trade your 4 Switches in for two.
Yeah, actually, so I would be
Switch
down for that. I don't have a particular love for the Joy-Cons or the Switch hardware, so I have no problem trading it to upgrade.
Well, I mean, it's going to be the Joy-Cons surely are going to be the same. I don't think they're going to. I think we need another system for this. I think it's going to be a very iterative
Yes, I
thing.
completely
I know
agree.
we say Nintendo we're going to do gimmicks.
No, it's gonna.
just don't
I
think
think it's
they're
gonna be just
do that.
the
Hardware
Switch again
improvements.
with graphical and RAM improvements. I really
Fucking
don't see.
and that doesn't topple over when you lift
Yeah,
it.
yeah, and like the whole back of it's a kickstand, right? Like I think that's a bit like the Surface, the Microsoft Surface, where they have those great kickstands on the back. I completely agree. Switch 2 is going to be an iterative console. There is no doubt in my mind about that.
The Joy-Cons will look the same, but they won't be compatible with each other. I think.
Yeah, that's you can't. Your games are so the account carries forward.
Yeah, the games.
but you can't be clicking Switch 2 Joy-Cons into your Switch 1. There's that you'll do it and they'll click, but nothing registers. It'll fit. It'll actually fit in it.
No, I think they'll make the
a little bit of plastic,
a
little bit, just a little jagged little something that just stops it. No, I think it's more egregious. I think it clicks in and doesn't register. I think it does actually fit. Now there'll be a live test. I'll get my Switch 2 live test on System Link to make sure that that's verified.
We need to. I think we got a few things. Next time there's a bit of a news drought, we'll try and look at some of this stuff that's coming up because it's next year will be a really good, exciting one. I think for new hardware.
But this is also it is a fair point you say though about release timing because of my interest in these platforms and what they're doing with them. I don't think 2026 is an unreasonable guess for a next-gen Xbox console. I think that's a sensible bet. I mean, that's the
rumor, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a sensible bet.
I think Xbox will move to a different release cycle to PlayStation, starting in 26, and they'll do when you would normally get a mid-gen refresh, you'll just get a slightly better Xbox, and everything will be more like a PC. And at some point, they'll get rid of the distinction between PCs completely, but
yes,
this will
agree.
be the start of that.
And Nintendo, I think, began that with the Switch in 2017, 3 years ahead of what the current gen is for PlayStation and Xbox, which released in the same year. They were 3 years earlier in 2017 for that. That to me says that we're now in that the gens are fluid. It's not. There's no sort of all 3 platforms within 6 months are going to release their next hardware, and that's the hardware for 7 years. It's just not happening. You know, we had mid-gen refreshes introduced in last gen with the One X and the PS4 Pro. I also agree that if anything happens hardware-wise for Xbox next year, it's a handheld. It's not a mid-gen refresh
But I think it's going to be interesting, because if it gets announced at a similar time to the Switch 2, then it's going to be seen as a competitor. And I don't know if Microsoft want that. Maybe they do want that. If they feel they can undercut on price or value, which they can certainly undercut on value. But whether they've got the balls to put some money behind the marketing, which they've historically been really bad at, and actually go head to head, be a bit cutthroat, like we said. Again, on the value point, they could certainly talk about the price of games and the number of games you get with the Xbox handheld versus the Switch 2 and things. But
certainly,
yeah, interesting to see.
But that's where I've landed with the PS5 Pro.
So I want an answer from you.
Okay.
On Switch 2 or PS5 Pro, or are you trying to get both?
Oh, dreams come true.
I guess it depends when Switch 2 comes out.
Yes. Yeah.
But if it's first half of the year, are you getting both, or are you getting Switch 2?
Dreams come true is both, always. Yeah, for sure.
Well, cool. Yeah.
But dreams come true, right? Like, that has to be, you know.
Yeah, but what what's realistic? Yeah.
Well, I'm head of drama now. Hey, please. Crisp high five is what I get.
Yeah, I suppose if you can trade in a couple of your Switches.
Yeah, I think I'd be looking at. I think I'd be looking at them. This is okay. This is why I can John Lock in my position on this. I think if I'm looking at Switch 2 like I would a PS5 Pro, because we think Switch 2 is going to be iterative, and I agree with you and everything you've said there. I think absolutely it's going to be an incremental change. I look at them like upgrading a CPU on an existing desktop, or putting a new graphics card in there. I'm looking at PS5 Pro like an upgrade to my PS5, not as I'm kicking off a new purchase. It's like a huge console refresh. I look at it as I want to upgrade my tech, and I think Switch 2 is going to have a similar feel to it. I am less like before. I would often, like, I still have my PS4 still. I'm showing you, but I still have my PS4. I got PS5 even still owning. I didn't trade it in, so I am less, I think, attached to the hardware this gen, and therefore would have no issue. Like, I've still got my GameCube, still got my N64. When I upgraded those Nintendo consoles, I kept the old ones. This time, I'm much more keen to get the latest version, especially when it's iterative, and I'm happier to trade it in to make it more viable to pick up those consoles in relatively short succession, sort of one after the other. So yes, ideal.
Disk drive.
Can I just vertical stand? Fuck off. No, absolutely not. You should be bundling that into that. I will categorically not buy the vertical stand. I will rearrange my desk to put it horizontally. I will not buy the vertical stand. That is egregious. That is Nintendo Ethernet adapter for the Switch levels of egregious to me. That is on exactly the same level. So absolutely not. Disk drive.
Because you'll lose your disk drive.
I will lose my disk drive. Dead air.
Gonna have to add another
100 quid. £100.
Blu-ray drive like 30 quid as well.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's a decent one. But...
I don't know how many physical games I have actually for PS5. You know,
what Blu-rays on there?
Xbox.
Okay.
I put them in the Xbox for that. That wouldn't be an issue. Oh yeah, really good point. 100 quid is egregious. I know I'm Jeremy console, but no.
Well, you have Jeremy Physical Media as well.
I am Jeremy Physical Media. But then, okay, so, I mean, this is a whole different system link. We are so over time, by the way. This is a whole different system link. I fly the flag of Physical Media, but I'm wondering if I'm going to devil's advocate myself, if I'm a bit bandwagony. That it's sort of cool to be like, support vinyl. Buy your games physically so that you can get around the ownership.
You do all these things.
Yes, I know. Yeah, I know. And that's what I'm saying. I'm wondering if is it actually I believe in them. I think it's. I mean, I have special editions, and I love like having those the behind the scenes, those physical copies of stuff. I love all that stuff, and that's genuine. But I'm wondering if that is more of just a taste thing rather than me fundamentally going physical over digital, because so many of the games I play are digital now. So many of them. So while I like having physical media as an option, I don't know if my playing habits actually match my evangelical, I've got to be like buying physical copies of everything, because I don't.
Yeah.
So it seems a bit disingenuous, maybe. I don't know.
I think this will be a difficult, because in my opinion, next gen won't have
digital
disk drives. None of them will have disk drives. And so I think that this would be a difficult gen to lose your physical media playing console. Like, what I'm saying is, if you traded your PS5 for a digital only, and in 5 years you think, oh, I want to play that obscure PS5 game that I've only got on a disc,
right?
You're just fucked, because PS6 isn't going to do it, and you've got nothing.
And then you're rebuying it. You're done, because I know that, like, my friend Johnny, he bought the Last of Us Collector's Edition I did.
Yeah,
but what he did was he bought a digital copy to go along with his physical one, because he wanted the convenience of the digital copy. So he had that, and for him, he fully acknowledged his maniac status there, but because that was like the one, it was Last of Us Part 2. So it was the one game where he was like, oh, I know I'm going to want this, like, accessible. It was for the preload as well. He did it because he wanted the preload to unlock at midnight. He took the day off, like, it was one of those, like, he was all in. Didn't want to rely on the delivery of the physical copy or having to collect it from somewhere. So buying that second digital copy for him was just like, it was a non-issue. So it's an interesting thing, because as much as I love a collector's edition and I love a Blu-ray, it's whether my actual gaming habits necessitate those things, or if it's truly a lot. Me spending £100 on a disc drive for my PS5 Pro would be a maximum unnecessary luxury purchase, much like the PS5 Pro is, much like all of this is. Let's not forget that this is all just first world problems that we're discussing right now. That this is what an enormously privileged position you and I could go, let's guess the price of a console and talk about which ones should we buy and when. You know, this is all very privileged.
I'm not buying any of them.
Yeah, but even just the notion of discussing it, even just the open conversation, it's all very, you know, we talk, you know, we're sitting here pretty with our Series X's. Well, we've done very well for ourselves this gen. We're good, you know. So it's an interesting thing. I don't know how much physical media is going to matter to me actually going forward. And I also agree with your prediction. I think the trend right now is it's going to, you know, so many games, like, you know, it used to be that it was like 20-30% digital. Now I'm seeing like some places reporting 70-80% digital sales on some titles, and they're just straight up not buying the physical copies. Only those huge games like FIFA are still selling well physically, or Call of Duty. But it'd be very interesting to see what that looks like 3 years from now. What those games and how that conversion rate, you know, how it works, you know.
Just be a card in a box, I think.
Yeah, do you think just a
Which
license?
you get sometimes.
The Alan Wake physical copy was the same thing. Was a card in a box.
They as good as Alan Wake is, without going off topic again. With the Steam thing with Alan Wake as well, they fucked up a couple of bits.
It was Epic. It was the Epic deal. The Epic, put in for the money, and they made it Epic exclusive. And now it's getting a physical release, though. Now it's getting a proper disc release that's an Ultimate Edition. Now that they're self-publishing it, which is fantastic. So. Well, look, it's 11:15. I mean, we
might have eaten into our.
I think we've eaten into the gaming time, I think, tonight. But listen, thanks everyone so much for tuning in. We will obviously, when the next sort of beta runs for 33 Immortals, that was our plan tonight. We will definitely jump on that. That will be a Burly Bird live potentially
release
as well.
date for it now, isn't there?
Is there? Oh, cool.
I think it's February. Let's just have a quick look.
Yeah, quick live check.
January 25th. So they might still do another one. Yeah.
Yeah. I could see a Game Awards beta over the Game Awards, maybe in December, to get ready for the new year. So we'll definitely get back to that for sure. Mike, this is what an epic. You know, we definitely actually. I know we had a lot of headlines, but I feel like we really did the deep dive on that, because we deep dived and segued. Like we were left, right, and center all over the place there. Thanks everyone so much for tuning in. It's been really nice to see you all in chat. Plug Socket Big Manny has always given us the support. It is appreciated. Mike, where can people find you on the internet?
TheXboxGuide.com.
Yeah, now an actual thing.
Check it
so
out.
Cool. Yeah, absolutely.
There's a Twitter account, but it's not massively active, so you're best off just going to the website. Any articles will be posted on there.
Yes, and actually that aggregates System Link episodes, original content, your news aggregator as well, plus also the legendary Phil tracker. What's Phil Spencer playing? Anything surprising out of his data recently, or is he still playing Diablo?
I mean, Football Manager.
Oh,
is a bit,
okay.
I have a feeling he just downloads all the Game Pass games.
Right.
He's played a fair amount of Final Fantasy 1 from the Pixel remaster. So that's he's been hammering that this week, as well as Age of Mythology. Good taste.
Yeah, good lad. Phil Spencer. Well, thanks again, everyone, for tuning in. We will be back this Saturday. I have no idea what we're playing, but Mike and I will be back for a Burly Bird live this Saturday at 9 o'clock. Please feel free to jump in, hang out with us for some jolly vibes on that Saturday night. And we will see you next time.
See ya.